February, 630 AD. The dust had barely settled on the bloodless conquest of Mecca when the drums of war beat again. The shockwaves of the city's fall had rippled through the Arabian Peninsula, awakening a sleeping giant in the mountains. The Hawazin and Thaqif, fierce nomadic warrior tribes who despised the urbanites of Mecca, had formed a massive coalition. They were coming to destroy the Prophet's army before it could consolidate its power. The Muslims marched out of Mecca with an army of 12,000 men. It was a staggering force, the largest military assembly in Arab history up to that point. Confidence swelled in the ranks. Some soldiers even boasted, "We shall not be defeated today due to lack of numbers." But overconfidence is the deadliest enemy of any army, and Khalid ibn al-Walid, riding at the very front as the commander of the vanguard, knew that raw numbers meant nothing in the treacherous mountains. The enemy commander, Malik ibn Auf, was a master of desert warfare. He knew he could not defeat 12,000 men in an open field, so he chose a battlefield that would neutralize the Muslim numbers and turn their massive size into a fatal weakness: the Valley of Hunayn. Hunayn was a nightmare of geography, a narrow, winding gorge flanked by steep, jagged cliffs and deep ravines. Under the cover of total darkness, Malik moved his entire army into the valley. He hid thousands of his finest archers behind boulders, in the crevices and along the high ridges. They knocked their arrows and waited in absolute silence. As dawn approached, the valley was cloaked in a heavy, blinding twilight. The Muslim vanguard, consisting of the Banu Sulaym cavalry led by Khalid, entered the gorge. The narrow path forced them into a tight, densely packed column. Khalid's senses were on high alert, but the darkness was absolute. There was no sound, no movement, just the echoing clatter of his own cavalry's hooves. Then, a single war cry shattered the dawn. It was a trap of apocalyptic proportions. From the black cliffs above, the sky literally rained wood and iron. Thousands of Hawazin arrows poured down upon the cramped Muslim vanguard. Because the Muslims were tightly packed in the bottleneck, the archers didn't even need to aim. Every arrow found flesh or horse. The chaos was instantaneous and catastrophic. Horses screamed, rearing up and crushing the men behind them. The vanguard was completely blinded by the ambush, unable to see the enemy hiding in the dark cliffs above. Panic, raw, contagious, and uncontrollable, seized the cavalry. The Banu Sulaym broke and turned their horses around, fleeing back down the narrow pass. Their desperate retreat triggered a devastating domino effect. The fleeing vanguard smashed into the main body of the Muslim army marching behind them, trampling their own comrades. The massive army of 12,000 men dissolved into the terrifying, crushing stampede. But amidst the routing cavalry and the hail of arrows, one man refused to turn his horse. Khalid ibn al-Walid did not flee. Even as his vanguard shattered around him, the sword of Allah drew his blade. Surrounded by the enemy, who were now pouring down from the cliffs to finish the slaughter with swords and spears, Khalid fought like a trapped lion. He swung his heavy scimitar, cutting down the Hawazin warriors who swarmed him. But he was only one man against a tide. The arrows found him, the spears found him. Khalid fought until his armor was pierced in multiple places, his blood soaking the dust of Hunayn. Overwhelmed by sheer numbers and catastrophic blood loss, the great commander was finally brought down. He collapsed against the side of his dead warhorse, severely wounded and unable to stand. For a moment, it looked like the end of the Muslim army. But further down the valley, the Prophet Muhammad had anchored himself. While thousands fled, the Prophet urged his white mule forward toward the enemy, shouting, "I am the Prophet, it is no lie." His uncle, Abbas, who had a booming voice, roared over the din of battle, calling the veterans of early battles back to the standard. Hearing the call, the corps veterans snapped out of their panic. They violently fought their way through the stampeding crowd, rushing back to the Prophet's side. The tide miraculously turned. The Muslims reformed their lines, locked their shields, and launched a ferocious countercharge up the valley. The Hawazin, who had broken their own defensive positions to chase the fleeing Muslims, were caught off guard by the brutal counterattack and were utterly crushed. The Battle of Hunayn was won, but the cost was horrific. As the dust settled and the enemy fled, the Prophet Muhammad walked through the carnage of the battlefield. He was not looking for loot. he was looking for his vanguard commander. He found Khalid leaning against the rocks, battered, broken, and bleeding heavily from deep, agonizing wounds. The invincible tactician who had shattered armies was now gasping for breath, pale from the loss of blood. The prophet knelt beside him. He did not reprimand Khalid for the vanguard breaking. He knew no mortal man could have withstood that ambush. Instead, the prophet showed a profound moment of spiritual mercy. He placed his hands over Khalid's bleeding wounds, prayed softly to God, and blew upon the injuries. According to the historical chronicles, Khalid felt an immediate soothing relief wash over his broken body. The bleeding slowed, and the agonizing pain dulled. He looked up at the prophet, his spirit forged anew in the crucible of defeat and miraculous victory. Hunayn taught Khalid a vital lesson that would shape his future conquests. The sword is only as strong as the hand that wields it, and the hand is only as strong as the faith that guides it. He had bled, he had fallen, but he had not been broken. The sword of Allah was now tempered in blood, ready for the titanic wars that lay ahead.